Vaxthorian circled above the city called Chicago, his massive wings casting shadows over the buildings below. He had done this 17 times before on 17 different worlds. The pattern never changed. He would arrive, demonstrate his power, and the inhabitants would surrender within days. Sometimes hours. Earth would be no different. He had studied their transmissions for months during his approach. Humans were weak creatures who lived barely a century. They spent their time watching flickering screens and consuming processed foods. They had only just begun exploring their own star system. Primitive, fragile, perfect. The dragon descended slowly, savoring the moment. His scales, darker than midnight and harder than any metal these humans could forge, gleamed in the afternoon sun. He was beautiful and terrible, and he knew it. Below, tiny figures scattered like insects. Cars crashed into each other. Sirens wailed. The chaos of fear, so familiar and so satisfying. Vaxthorian landed in the center of a wide street, cracking the pavement beneath his weight. He stood 3 stories tall, his horned head towering over the vehicles frozen in traffic around him. Smoke curled from his nostrils. His wings spread wide, blocking out the sky. "People of Earth," he began, his voice rolling like thunder across the city. He had prepared this speech carefully, as he always did. "I am Vaxthorian, conqueror of 17 worlds, master of the void between stars. Your weapons cannot harm me. Your armies cannot stop me. Surrender now, and I will be merciful. Resist, and I will turn your cities to ash." He waited for the screaming to intensify, for the panicked flight, for the eventual appearance of their military leaders, faces pale with terror, ready to negotiate terms of submission. Instead, something cold and wet hit him directly in the face with tremendous force. Vaxthorian sputtered, shaking his massive head. Water streamed off his scales. He blinked, confused and irritated. A human stood perhaps 50 feet away, wearing a yellow coat and helmet, holding a thick hose that sprayed a powerful jet of water directly at the dragon's face. "Get out of my city, you overgrown gecko!" The human shouted. The dragon stared. In 3,000 years of conquest, no one had ever done this. Fear, he expected. Worship sometimes. Desperate violence, occasionally. But this casual disrespect, this audacity? Never. "Did you just spray me with water?" Vaxthorian asked, his voice dangerous and low. "You're blocking traffic." The firefighter yelled back, still spraying. "We got real emergencies to deal with." Before the dragon could respond, more humans emerged from buildings and vehicles. They weren't running away. They were taking out small devices and pointing them at him, recording him. Some were speaking into their devices, narrating his presence like he was some curiosity rather than an instrument of their doom. "Yo, is that a real dragon?" Someone shouted. "Looks fake. Probably a movie thing." "Nah, man, that's definitely real. Look at the scales." Vaxthorian felt his anger rising. He drew in breath, preparing to demonstrate exactly how real he was, when military vehicles arrived with squealing tires. Soldiers poured out, taking positions behind their vehicles. Finally, proper resistance. He released his psychic presence, the overwhelming aura of terror that had paralyzed entire armies on other worlds. The humans flinched. Some went pale. Then a sergeant barked, lighted up. They opened fire. Bullets bounced off Vaxthorian's scales like rain, of course. He was ancient and powerful, his hide proof against plasma weapons that could melt starship hulls. These primitive projectile weapons were nothing. He spread his wings and roared, unleashing a stream of fire that turned 3 military vehicles into melting slag. But the humans didn't break. They scattered, regrouped, and kept firing. More vehicles arrived. A tank rolled around the corner, and fired a shell that actually staggered him when it hit his shoulder. Not painful, but surprising in its force. What happened next defied all of Vaxthorian's experience with conquered species. A human drove a fuel truck directly at him, leaping out at the last second. The truck exploded against his chest in a massive fireball. Through the flames, he saw soldiers using the smoke as cover to advance, firing what appeared to be modified weapons with larger projectiles. One soldier climbed onto a building and jumped onto his back, trying to stab something between his scales. The dragon threw him off easily, but the sheer recklessness of the attempt shocked him. These creatures had seen what he could do. They had felt his psychic terror. They should be paralyzed with fear, yet they kept attacking with a wild, almost enthusiastic desperation. More explosions. More gunfire. Helicopters appeared overhead, and the dragon realized with dawning disbelief that he was actually being pushed back. Not by superior force, but by sheer chaotic aggression. These humans fought like they had nothing to lose, with no coordination but absolute commitment. Vaxthorian launched himself into the air, wings beating hard. He needed to reassess. On other worlds, first contact involved either immediate surrender or organized military resistance that he crushed decisively. This was neither. This was barely controlled chaos, and it had actually forced him to retreat as he flew toward the mountains to the west. He heard one of the soldiers below shouting into a radio, "Target is retreating." Repeat, "We made the dragon retreat. Someone get me R&D on the line. We need bigger guns." The dragon's mind reeled. Made him retreat? They spoke like they had won. Like this was just the beginning. On every other world, retreat by the defending force meant acceptance of defeat. But these humans seemed to think his retreat meant their victory. Vaxthorian found a mountain peak and landed heavily, trying to understand what had just happened. 17 worlds had fallen before him. 17 species had recognized the futility of resistance and surrendered. For the first time in 3,000 years, the dragon felt something unfamiliar crawling up his spine. Not fear, not quite, but perhaps its distant cousin. Uncertainty. Vax, single quotes Thorin, had claimed a cave system in the Rocky Mountains, a defensible position where he could observe and plan. He had always been a patient conqueror. Sometimes resistance took weeks to break. He would wait, demonstrate his power periodically, and watch the defenders' hope crumble into despair. But humans didn't seem to understand despair. From his cave, the dragon monitored their communications. He had learned their languages during his approach to Earth, and now he listened with growing bewilderment. Their news broadcasts didn't speak of surrender or doom. They analyzed him like a puzzle to solve. Scientists discussed his biology. Military experts debated tactics. And strangest of all, their common citizens created something called memes. Digital images mocking his retreat from Chicago. One popular image showed his face with text reading, 3,000-year-old dragon, defeated by Chicago firefighter with hose. Another showed him flying away with the caption, "I must go. My planet needs me." They were laughing at him. At Vaxthorian, conqueror of 17 worlds. They treated his invasion like entertainment. 3 days after Chicago, the dragon decided to demonstrate real power. He flew to a city called Denver and unleashed devastation. He burned buildings, toppled structures, and roared his dominance for hours. When he finished, surely they would understand their helplessness. The next morning, he monitored their response. Emergency crews worked through the rubble. Leaders gave speeches about resilience. And then, impossibly, a new broadcast began. Scientists had collected samples of his fire residue. They were analyzing its chemical composition. They were publishing papers on dragon flame temperature and combustion properties, publishing them openly, freely, for anyone to access. Vaxthorian felt genuine alarm. On other worlds, conquered species hoarded information desperately, trying to keep any advantage secret. Humans broadcasted their discoveries to their entire species instantly. Every lesson they learned from fighting him was immediately shared with every other human. They were turning his attacks into research data. The military adapted with terrifying speed. Within a week, they modified their weapons based on observations from Chicago. They noticed his scales deflected energy but could be damaged by sustained kinetic impact. So they built bigger kinetic weapons, larger caliber rounds, missiles designed not to explode on contact but to penetrate first. When Vaxthorian attacked a military convoy in Montana, he discovered humans had developed formations specifically to counter dragon tactics. They used bait units to draw his fire, while hidden artillery fired from concealed positions. When he destroyed a squadron of their jets, the pilots ejected and continued coordinating strikes from the ground via the air. Communication devices. Dead warriors stayed dead on other worlds. Human warriors just got angrier and kept fighting. The military resistance, while troubling, was expected. What truly disturbed Vaxthorian was the civilian response. Hunters tracked him through the mountains, studying his patterns. Engineers analyzed his flight mechanics and published papers on the physics of dragonflight. A group of scientists collected scales he had shed during battle and performed biological analysis, sharing detailed findings about scale composition and potential weaknesses. One particularly bold human, a wildlife expert, FILM, made a documentary about his hunting behavior and predicted where he would strike next with unsettling accuracy. Dragons are ambush predators, the woman explained to her camera, standing in the very mountains where Vaxthorian hid. They rely on psychological dominance. But humans are cooperative hunters. We share information. We plan. We adapt. This dragon's biggest mistake was thinking we're prey. The dragon watched the video with growing unease. She was right. On every other world, fear prevented cooperation. Survivors hid in isolated groups, too terrified to organize. But humans seemed to become more organized when threatened. They shared information compulsively. They collaborated with strangers. They treated his invasion as a species-wide project. 2 months after his arrival, Vaxthorian faced his first truly coordinated assault. Military forces attacked his cave system from multiple angles simultaneously, using tactics specifically designed to counter his advantages. They deployed sonic weapons that disrupted his hearing. They used thermal camouflage that confused his heat-sensing vision. They worked in small, mobile teams that struck and retreated before he could retaliate effectively. He killed dozens of them, but dozens more took their place. And every casualty was studied, every failure analyzed. Humans performed autopsies on their own dead to understand exactly how dragonfire killed, then developed better protective equipment. They were weaponizing their own losses. The dragon began taking wounds. Small ones, nothing serious, but wounds nonetheless. His scales showed stress fractures from repeated impacts. A missile had damaged his left wing, forcing him to favor his right during flight. These injuries would heal, but the fact they existed at all was unprecedented. Most disturbing was a report he intercepted from something called a middle school science fair. A young human, barely into adolescence, had presented a project analyzing his flight capabilities. She argued that his flight violated their known physics, that his body mass versus wing surface area made traditional aerodynamic flight impossible. Therefore, she concluded, he must have some biological organ that manipulated gravity. The child was correct. The gravity organ was Dragon's most carefully guarded secret. Within days, human scientists expanded on the child's theory. Within weeks, they had located the organ's probable position through analysis of his flight patterns. Within a month, they were developing weapons specifically designed to disrupt gravitational fields. Vaxthorian realized with cold certainty that he was fighting a species that treated failure as data collection. Every defeat taught them something new. Every retreat gave them time to innovate. They had weaponized curiosity itself. When he destroyed a research facility in California, he discovered they had already distributed all findings to hundreds of other locations globally. Kill one researcher, and 10 more volunteers appeared. Not from duty, but from genuine excitement at the challenge. The dragon attempted to negotiate. He contacted their leaders through radio frequencies, offering to leave Earth peacefully if they ceased hostilities. The response came from a general with steel. In her voice, "We didn't ask you to leave. We asked you to surrender." They wanted him alive, to study, to learn from, to ensure no other dragon ever threatened their world. Vaxthorian, for the first time in 3,000 years, felt real fear. Vaxthorian made his decision in the cold hour before dawn. He would make his final stand at his mountain lair. Better to die as a conqueror than surrender to a prey species. Better to burn magnificently than accept the humiliation of capture. He was ancient, powerful, and proud. He would show these humans what a true dragon could do when fighting to the death. He spent the night preparing. Dragons had natural advantages beyond their physical power. They collapsed sections of the cave system to create choke points. He heated the mountain stone until it glowed, turning his lair into a furnace that would kill unprotected humans. He prepared his most devastating attacks, the techniques that consume massive energy but could level entire armies. The humans would come at dawn. They always did. They liked their symbolism, these creatures. New beginnings and such. Sure enough, as the sun touched the mountain peaks, Vaxthorian's keen hearing detected the approach. Helicopters, ground vehicles, marching feet. Hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. The entire military might of the region converging on his position. He smiled grimly. Let them come. Let them learn the cost of angering a dragon. The assault began with artillery, shells screaming through the morning air to explode against the mountain. Vaxthorian weathered the bombardment, his scales deflecting most impacts. Then came the helicopters, firing missiles equipped with the new penetrator warheads designed to pierce his armor. Several found their mark, and the dragon felt genuine pain as they drove through weakened scales. He launched himself from the cave, roaring defiance. His fire swept across the sky, turning one helicopter into a falling fireball. Soldiers on the ground scattered as he landed among them, claws tearing through vehicles like paper. For a glorious moment, he was what he had always been. Unstoppable, magnificent, terrible. Then the sonic weapons activated, and his world became pain. The sound waves disrupted his inner ear, destroying his balance. He staggered, wings flailing. The humans pressed their advantage, concentrating fire on his injured wing. Blood, dark and hot, splattered the stone. Vaxthorian fought with desperate fury. He had killed hundreds on 17 worlds. He would kill hundreds more here. He caught a soldier in his claws, preparing to crush the life from the tiny figure, when something made him pause. The soldier was badly wounded, bleeding from a head injury. She was barely conscious, but her squad members, seeing her in the dragon's grasp, didn't retreat. They charged directly at him, firing uselessly at his chest, screaming in rage and fear. They knew they would die. Their weapons couldn't harm him at close range, but they came anyway, trying to save their fallen comrade. Vaxthorian had conquered 17 worlds. He had seen countless species in battle. And in all that time, all those wars, he had never seen any species do what these humans did. Other species abandoned their wounded. Survival of the individual outweighed loyalty to the group. It was rational, logical, natural, but these humans ran toward certain death to retrieve a single wounded member. The dragon hesitated, confused by the display. In that moment of confusion, his grip loosened. The wounded soldier fell from his claws. Her squad members grabbed her and dragged her to cover, still firing at him the entire time. 3 of them died in the rescue. The others didn't even pause, didn't mourn. They just kept fighting. That pause cost him. The humans deployed their gravitational disruptors, devices built on the theories of that child's science project. Vaxthorian felt his gravity organ convulse as the field generators activated. His flight became erratic. He crashed to the ground, wings flailing uselessly. Soldiers swarmed his position. Nets made of some impossibly strong material tangled his limbs. Automated turrets fired specialized rounds that cracked his scales. Within minutes, the ancient dragon was pinned, wounded, and defeated. He waited for the killing blow. On other worlds, victory meant death for the loser. Quick, usually. Merciful, sometimes. But always final. Instead, a human approached slowly. She wore a military uniform with many decorations. A general, his mind supplied. She carried no weapon. Behind her, medics set up equipment. Medical equipment. For him, Vaxthorian, the general said calmly, we're offering terms. Surrender. Share information about the 17 worlds you conquered. Help us understand what else is out there, what other threats might come. In exchange, we'll treat your wounds. We'll provide sanctuary. And we'll offer you a position as an advisor on interstellar matters. The dragon stared at her. You want me alive? We want you as an ally, she corrected. You have knowledge we need. You've seen things we haven't. You could help us prepare for what's beyond our world. I invaded your planet. I killed your people. Yes. The general's face hardened. You did, and we'll remember that. But we're pragmatic. You're more valuable alive than dead. More useful as a source of information than as a corpse. And frankly, we need to know how to fight other dragons, if they exist. Vaxthorian laughed, a bitter sound. You're not afraid I'll escape? That I'll attack again? If you try, we'll kill you. Her voice held absolute certainty. We know how now, but we don't think you will try. You're intelligent. You've seen what we can do, and I think you're curious about us now. The dragon considered. Pride demanded he refuse. Honor demanded he die fighting. But beneath the pride and honor, something else stirred. Curiosity. She was right. He was curious. These humans didn't just refuse to quit. They refused to let each other quit. That soldier's squad had charged into certain death, not from orders, but from something deeper. They pact-bonded with each other, created loyalty that transcended rational self-interest, and now they offered that same irrational loyalty to him. An enemy, a monster who had killed their kind. Why? He asked quietly. Why offer this? The general smiled slightly. Because we're humans. We turned wolves into dogs. We domesticated cats that barely tolerate us. We befriend robots. We pack bond with anything, including things that try to kill us. It's what we do. Vaxthorian felt laughter bubbling up, real laughter. You're insane. Probably, she agreed. Do you accept? The dragon looked at the soldiers surrounding him, at the medics preparing to treat his wounds, at the weapons still pointed at him, ready to fire if he refused, at the determination in their eyes. I accept, he said finally. 6 months after his surrender, Vaxthorian stood in the command center of humanity's first interstellar warship. The vessel, named Determination with typical human directness, represented a fusion of dragon knowledge and human engineering. It was smaller than the great ships of other spacefaring species, but it was fast, heavily armed, and crewed by the most aggressively optimistic beings the galaxy had ever produced. The dragon had healed from his wounds. Those scars remained beneath his scales. Physical scars, at least. The mental scars ran deeper. He had been humbled, defeated, and forced to reconsider everything he believed about strength and weakness. Dragon Actual. "We need your input on the jump calculations," called Lieutenant Chen from the navigation station. Vaxthorian moved to her console, his bulk filling the narrow corridors designed for humans. They had offered to build him larger quarters, but he had refused. He was learning to adapt, as humans did constantly. "The fourth moon of Jantarus has orbital defense platforms," he explained, bringing up star charts on the display. "They'll detect any ship entering the system. However, there's a debris field from an ancient battle here." He indicated a position on the map. "The debris creates sensor shadows. Enter through this vector, and you'll be hidden until you're within the planet's gravity well." "Sneaky," Chang grinned. "I like it. Though entering through a debris field seems risky. Humans jumped on my back trying to stab me with knives," Vaxthorian pointed out dryly. "I think you can handle some space debris." The lieutenant laughed, as humans often did. They found humor in everything, even danger. Especially danger, actually. It was one of their most baffling traits. In the months since his surrender, Vaxthorian had learned that human psychology was simultaneously their greatest weakness and their greatest weapon. They were terrified of nearly everything, yet they did things anyway. They acknowledged danger, then charged directly at it. They created entire entertainment industries around simulating fear. 5 minutes to jump," announced the captain, a stern woman named Rodriguez who had fought at the mountain battle. She had lost friends there. Vaxthorian had killed people she cared about. Yet she worked alongside him professionally, even efficiently. Humans compartmentalized trauma in ways that disturbed him. The dragon returned to his station. His role on the ship was tactical advisor and cultural liaison. He knew the 17 conquered worlds, knew the species that inhabited them, knew how they fought and thought. That knowledge was now being used to free those worlds rather than keep them enslaved. It was strange. Vaxthorian had spent 3,000 years as a conqueror. Now he was part of a liberation fleet. The irony wasn't lost on him. "All stations report ready," Rodriguez announced. "Engaging jump drive in 3, 2, 1. Space folded around the determination. The jump drive was partly human innovation, partly adapted from Vaxthorian's knowledge of dragon void traveling techniques. The journey between stars took days rather than months now. Humans had taken his secrets and improved them. They did that with everything. During the jump, Vaxthorian attended his afternoon lecture. Yes, lecture. He was taking an online university course in Earth history, specifically military history. The professor, an enthusiastic woman named Dr. Martinez, was explaining the Battle of Thermopylae when the dragon joined the virtual classroom. "Ah, Vaxthorian," she greeted cheerfully. Students in the virtual space waved. They were used to having a dragon in class. "We're discussing how small forces can resist larger ones through tactical advantage and morale. Any thoughts from your perspective?" The dragon considered. "The Spartans lost that battle, but they delayed the Persian army," a student countered. "They inspired Greece. Sometimes losing strategically is winning tactically." Vaxthorian thought about Chicago, about that firefighter with the hose, about being pushed back by sheer chaotic resistance. "Yes," he admitted. "I'm beginning to understand that concept." After class, he made his way to the recreation deck. Several off-duty crew members were there, including a group playing something called Dungeons and Dragons. They had invited him to join their campaign, insisting he would make an excellent non-player character. "You're the dragon guarding the magical artifact," explained Corporal Davies, who served as the dungeon master. "The heroes have to convince you to help them instead of fighting you." "Why would I help them?" That's what makes it interesting. Davies grinned. Maybe you're tired of guarding the artifact. Maybe you're lonely. Maybe you realize the artifact is dangerous and you want someone to destroy it. You decide your character's motivation. Vaxthorian found himself drawn into the game despite his initial skepticism. The human's ability to create elaborate fictional scenarios for entertainment had puzzled him at first. Now he understood it was training. They practiced problem-solving, cooperation, and creative thinking through play. Even their leisure time made them more effective. The intercom chimed. All hands to stations. Exiting jump in 2 minutes. The game disbanded quickly as crew members rushed to their posts. Vaxthorian made his way to the command center, his mind shifting from play to war. The transition came easily now. Humans had taught him to separate different parts of his life, to find joy even while preparing for battle. The determination emerged from jump space near the debris field, exactly where Vaxthorian had calculated. Jantarus filled the view screen, a green and blue world that had once been free before the dragon conquered it. The Jantari were peaceful plant-like beings who communicated through chemical signals. They had surrendered immediately when Vaxthorian arrived, their biology incapable of comprehending resistance. Orbital defense platforms detected, reported the tactical officer. They haven't seen us yet. Begin approach vector, Rodriguez commanded. Dragon Actual, open a channel on Jantari frequencies. Let's tell them we're here to help. Vaxthorian activated the communication system, broadcasting on the chemical communication frequencies the Jantari used. He explained in their language that humanity had come to free them, that the dragon who had conquered them now fought for their liberation. The response was confusion, disbelief, then cautious hope. Jantari had never conceived of fighting back. But they understood growing things, nurturing things. They understood cooperation. Within hours, the Jantari resistance movement, small but determined, made contact. They provided intelligence on the automated defense systems Vaxthorian had left behind. Human engineers analyzed the systems, found weaknesses, and disabled them with minimal violence. The liberation of Jantarus took 3 days. No shots were fired. No lives were lost. Humans talked, negotiated, and problem-solved their way through every obstacle. When they departed, they left behind advisors to help the Jantari rebuild, offered trade agreements, and invited them to join a growing coalition of free worlds. 16 more to go, Rodriguez said as they left orbit. Then what, Dragon? What do you do when we've freed all the worlds you conquered? Vaxthorian gazed at the stars beyond the view screen. I don't know, he admitted. For 3,000 years, I knew exactly what I was. Now I'm something new. Welcome to being human, the captain smiled. We're all making it up as we go. The dragon realized she was right. Humans didn't have ancient traditions of conquest or predetermined roles. They reinvented themselves constantly. They adapted. They changed. They turned enemies into allies and problems into opportunities. And now, whether he liked it or not, Vaxthorian was learning to do the same. The dragon who had expected easy conquest had found something unexpected instead, a purpose beyond domination, a connection beyond fear, and a species that refused to let him be anything less than what he could become. He didn't expect resistance. He certainly didn't expect to join it. But as the determination jumped toward the next world, toward the next liberation, Vaxthorian found himself looking forward to the challenge. Humans had taught him that failure wasn't an ending. It was just data for the next attempt.